All right, everyone, we're super excited to be here with you today. We have some amazing speakers for you today, an amazing team that will be presenting. We have the owners of Enginehire, just a transformative platform for agency owners. They're here to share some tips on how we can increase our productivity. I think this is an area that we all are always growing in, and something that agency owners are never far away from trying to find ways to improve their processes to make their time more efficient. And so I think any technology and tips that we can have to that end is going to be really valuable. So I hope you have your notepad and your pens and your pencils available today so that you can take down notes. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat box and we'll make sure that those are answered during this session on today. And at this time, I am going to turn it over to Akash, who is the owner of this all-in-one software program called Enginehire that is for operating and automating your nanny and household staffing agency needs. So we're super excited to have him today. And at this point, I'm going to turn it on over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. Thanks for joining in. And yeah, I think, as a fellow business owner, kind of always trying to find ways to save time. And I think it's, I think when you're running a business, there's just never enough time in the day and there's always like so many things to do. And so I think it's really important, we've just seen a number of things across like really hundreds of agencies. Like, what are the kinds of things that, where are kind of the biggest time sucks and what are things you can do to kind of not let your time get sucked into those? And so I just want to kind of share some of those things and some of the kind of tools and some of the techniques we've seen, other amazing agency owners like you use to try to solve some of those things. So I think one of the first kind of big areas where we see a lot of kind of time getting sucked in is in creating profiles for nannies to share them with the families and with your clients. And I think, what tends to happen is, from what we've seen and from the experience talking to a lot of people, as amazing as all of our nannies and sitters and childcare providers are at their jobs, they're usually not the best at creating resumes. And so, when we see kind of a lot of times they don't really have resumes at all. And if they do, Microsoft Word is just not their kind of strong suit. And so a lot of times what ends up happening, we see with a lot of agencies, is you basically have to recreate kind of a profile for them. And there are some amazing tools for those, like if I know a lot of agencies use Canva. If you haven't looked at it, highly recommend it for creating profiles, creating Instagram content. It's a really, really amazing design tool. But, the same way for the nannies, kind of creating a resume is maybe not their strong suit. For you as the agency owner, that's not really where you add the most value. Your job is not really kind of designing stuff and putting together documents. I think, and that can take a lot of time. It can take an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours putting together a really nice portfolio. And so, what the real kind of unlock we've seen comes here when you can create a mechanism for the nannies to put this together for themselves. And there are different kind of options for doing this. We've seen some agencies create kind of amazing templates through Microsoft Word and things like that, which nannies can go in and fill in on their own. There are other kind of options for creating templates. What I kind of want to share with you is this idea we kind of have of, it's sort of like a resume builder sort of idea. Like, can we make a tool that it's easy for nannies to put in their information? I don't know if you use LinkedIn, but it's kind of like this idea of like LinkedIn for nannies, where you put in slots like, hey, can you put in your education certifications? Can you put in your employment history? Can you put in your references? And our take on this is, if you can kind of collect this information, and it becomes a lot easier for the nannies because they don't need to think about like, what information specifically do you need? They don't need to think about formatting it. And the way we've kind of done this is when they put in all of that information, it just kind of pulls it together into a template, which creates like a digital resume or digital portfolio for them. And now this is just kind of one way to do this. Our sort of take on this. Try to think of a way, whether it's this or some other way of, how can I put as much of this back into the hands of the nannies and the applicants as possible, because this is information that they know, like they know their own experience, they know their own education. You just need to make it easy for them to give you that information. So yeah, that's kind of the first big thing that we've seen around where your time goes is in creating those nanny profiles. And if you can find a way to cut down on that, it can be a huge time saver. The second thing we wanted to kind of talk to is for the agencies that do temp and babysitting, what we've seen is that it can be a serious challenge, like the families are often on your case with very short timelines. Everything is pretty time sensitive. You're chasing the clients to get contracts signed, you're chasing clients to get payment information, you're chasing your sitters to find out if they're available to take on the job. And the way you need to kind of think about this, I think, is how much am I actually making from this sitter job? Usually a lot of times the fees on these sitter jobs, it's just not that high. And that's just the reality of kind of the business. And so, if you're charging a fee of, let's say, $30 for a sitter, and it takes you an hour to send all of the emails, gather all of the information, do all of the matching, is that really worth it? Like if it's taking you an hour or two, you think about what your kind of like an hour of your time is worth. It very quickly becomes not worth it. And I think a lot of agencies fall into this trap of, I'm offering the sitter service. Your clients need that service. It's very useful in kind of the market that you're serving. But unless there's a way to do it more efficiently, it's just it just won't work out in terms of the time and what the value of your time is. And so the kind of the strategy we've seen that works really successfully here is when you're doing a nanny placement, you need to have a lot of back and forth with the family. You need to have a strong relationship with them. You need to really understand what they're looking for. It's a little different on the sitter side, where it can be a little bit more of kind of a logistics problem of they really just need to know that you've done a good job vetting the sitter and they'll show up on time. That's really what matters. You don't, and so what you can do around that is this idea, the kind of idea here is try to avoid needing to have a call with the family or chase them multiple times for information. And so, whether you're using a WordPress site, Wix site, Squarespace site, any other kind of form builder, try to capture the information you need immediately from the family so you can immediately match them with sitters without having to chase them for stuff. So the kind of the big things we've seen here is, okay, you definitely need to know the like parents or the contact information and the location. So that's one thing. The other thing you'll want to know is details about the children. So like their name, birthday, gender. It's also helpful sometimes to ask for other information like things they like to do. What is their personality like? Any medical conditions, allergies. Make sure you're getting that kind of information. So as soon as the sitter gets matched with the family, you can share all of that kind of information with them. And then immediately ask the family, what dates and times are you looking for a sitter? So, we have kind of like a calendar style, but there's so many different ways to do this, so let them tell you, we want someone from this time to this time on this date. We need someone who can drive, or we need someone who can prepare food or whatever. Like, think about what are the questions you typically end up asking the families when you have a call with them or when they email you or they text you or whatever, and try to build all of that into the information that you're collecting from them. And the other thing that we found is really important on the sitter side is it's usually a good idea to be super transparent about your rates too. We've heard from a lot of agencies that if the family's not sure exactly how much this is going to cost them, then they end up calling you as well to find out. And again, telling people your pricing is not really a good use of your time again. So, what we really recommend is communicate your rates and fees clearly. How much is it going to cost per hour? Are there any kind of travel fees, rush fees, overtime fees, anything like that? Try to make it clear to them. And then what we even encourage is take it one step further, get their payment information. And if possible, get them to sign, if you have terms and conditions or digital contract or something like that. And so really the idea here is if I'm a family looking for a babysitter, what do you need from me? I need the parents' information, the location information, the children's information, the booking information, the payment information, and the legal information. It's those 6 things. If you have those 6 things, you don't have to waste time chasing the family for any of this kind of stuff. You immediately have everything you need to start matching them with your sitters. And so this can cut down the cost, the time cost and the actual cost of running this style of business. So really think about that. I know in this industry we're so personalized, and it is so important. And I think that really is a factor on when you're doing long-term placements. And I think we would all love to do that on the sitter side as well, but usually there just isn't. It just doesn't make enough sense if you're spending an hour or two with a family to match them with a sitter. It's just not going to make sense in the long term for your business. So we really encourage you to find a way to get all of the information you need upfront from them. And then you can talk to them if you need to, or something's unclear, but keep refining the information you're collecting from them so you don't need to keep chasing them for that kind of information. And then I think kind of on a related point also for those of you who are doing kind of temp services and sitter services, I think the second place where we end up kind of spending a lot of time sort of what I think of as like chasing people is then trying to find out who are the sitters who are available to do those jobs. And so what we found works really well there is you want to find some way to communicate out to people what are the jobs you have available. And we've seen all kinds of creative ways that agencies do this. You could have a private Facebook group for all of your sitters where you post every job as it comes in. The kind of approach we've taken to this is something we kind of think about as the available opportunities calendar. So as a sitter, working for your agency, I can see whatever jobs you have available. And this way, it creates sort of what we think of as like transparency of information, where a lot of times what happens in agencies is you're the only one who knows everything. And so you're reaching out to every sitter via text message or email or trying to find out who's available. Try to find a way that you can share this information broadly. So we've seen agencies with WhatsApp groups for sharing their new jobs as they come in. I already mentioned Facebook groups. There's other amazing tools. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Sitter Pro. It's a really amazing tool for this kind of thing. Try to find a way where your sitters can help you basically match themselves with the jobs, because really they need to know simple stuff. They need to know where the job is, they need to know the start time, they need to know the end time, and maybe they need to know kind of how much they're getting paid or things like that. If there's a lot of variability, maybe they need to know some information about the kids. Think about what is the information that the sitters need to know so that basically they can match themselves to your jobs, rather than you trying to think like, oh, I think Claire said she's available on Fridays. Maybe I'll reach out to her and see if she can do this. And then you're waiting for her to text you back or whatever. It's just, you don't have time for that. And so you can save a ton of time by putting this information out there in a way where people can tell you if they can take the job. And so if you can do these 2 things, get all of the information directly from the clients around what they're looking for, and then communicate all the information directly to your sitters, you'll get in this really cool cycle where your sitter agency can almost sort of start to run itself, where the clients should be doing all the work of telling you what they need, and the sitter should be doing the work of telling you whether they can do the job or not. And your only function is to kind of oversee it and be the glue and make sure you're getting paid on time and your sitters are getting paid on time and your families are happy. So yeah, I think try to think about that kind of that concept of how can I get my sitter agency to sort of run itself a little bit more. Where are the places where I'm spending the most time, and can I cut back on those? So yeah, that's where in terms of sitter agencies. Now, the fourth place where we see kind of a lot of time get lost is a lot of agencies don't have a good way to search their data. And so what I mean by that is I think pretty much this is kind of common across the industry as a whole. Almost all of us have, an application form for our nannies and applicants, and we have a registration form for our clients. Sorry, I think I'm seeing questions coming in. Yeah, Marilyn, we do have that kind of system, and we can talk about that after, but yeah. So maybe I'll just look at all the questions at the end. But so what tends to happen, what we've seen with a lot of agencies is you'll have a really great candidate application form where you're collecting the information. And so step one, we've seen some agencies where you do this with a Word document or a PDF that the nannies fill in. You have to digitize that. You absolutely have to digitize that. And the reason for that is if a nanny fills in a Word document or a PDF and sends it to you, 6 months later, you have no way of searching that. Like it just becomes a file saved on your computer. And it's really hard to remember, does that nanny have 7 years of experience or 2? Are they comfortable working with dogs or not? You don't know. Like it's fresh in your mind the moment they apply. But think about yourself 6 months later. You probably did the hard work of reading their resume, screening them. You may have even interviewed them and everything. And then you can't search that information anymore. So you're almost losing the time that you already spent vetting that nanny. So the way you need to think about this, the way we kind of think about it is, what are the kind of ways that I search my system? So we think like, let's say a family asks you, I want a nanny who speaks Spanish. Do you have a way to look up all of the nannies who speak Spanish? Or, they want someone who can drive. So these are simple things. Like when we're matching the families with the nannies, we're thinking about so much stuff, like their personality and what type of family the nanny likes and what type of nanny the family likes. But there's some simple things, these are black and white. Does the nanny speak Spanish? Yes or no? Does she drive? Yes or no? If you don't have a way to search your existing kind of database of nannies for that information, you're at a huge disadvantage, because you're either going to have to look through everyone's files, look through their resumes, and try to figure out who are those people who meet those requirements. And really, this is not leveraging your skills and your experience and your abilities of matching nannies and families together. This is simple stuff, whether the nanny drives or not is very simple. But if you don't have a way to look that up, then you're going to spend a lot of time searching your information for that. And the like I said, or kind of alluded to earlier, is this idea that, let's say you post a job today, you're going to have 7 or 8 nannies, maybe 20 nannies apply who are interested, and only one of them is going to get that job. But you probably spent the time interviewing several of them, checking references for several of them. And so they should be accessible to you in a way where when the next job opportunity comes along 3 months from now, you can draw on that pool of nannies that you spent all that time vetting. I hope that makes sense. And so there are a lot of different ways you can do this. There's some great tools out there. Airtable is an amazing tool for this. It's kind of like a digital spreadsheet. Even Excel is really good for this. And it's not maybe the most user-friendly or pretty, but just ask yourself these questions of, like, if a family asks me for a nanny who speaks Spanish, do I have a way to look that up or not? If the family says they have dogs, do I have a way to look up my nannies who are comfortable working with dogs? Or am I going to have to ask each person that? And as you're thinking about those questions, think about including some of those questions somewhere in your application process. Like, what type of position are you looking for? If someone's asking for if you do live-in style positions, you should be asking people, do you do that? Ask them about their thing with pets. Ask them, vaccination is a little bit of a tricky one, so I won't get into that. You can ask them if they know how to drive. You can ask them if they know how to swim. Think about those requirements and make sure you're collecting that information. Again, these are things, make it clickable. They just click on the things that they want. Don't make it too complicated for them. But if you don't have that information, you're going to spend so much time every time you get a new family checking with nannies, like, are you can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? It's not a good use of time. So yeah, think about that. If you're collecting your forms into like a WordPress form, if you're collecting them into a Wix form, um, if you're using Jotform, a lot of those systems have tools where you can export that data out into like a spreadsheet style. So, and then you can use those spreadsheets to search for these kinds of things. So there are a lot of kind of different ways to do this, but make sure you do have a way to do this, and make sure that if someone is applying to your agency, you're still able to look them up 6 months from now, 1 year from now, because you might not have the right job for them at the moment they apply, but there's a good chance sometime in your journey, the right job for them is going to come along, and you want to make sure you're able to pull them up when that time comes. The last thing I wanted to kind of talk about is reference checking. So reference checking is a really interesting thing where we've seen a lot of agencies spend a lot of time on reference checking. Some agencies end up hiring a person specifically just for the purpose of checking references. And so now I think checking references is super important. The question again becomes, how can you save time doing this? And so we've spoken to a lot of kind of on the nanny side, on the agency side, and what we've understood is, again, it becomes a question of time. Usually what happens is, if you're a nanny or you're a babysitter, the references you're going to provide are other families that you work with, and they're usually parents with little kids. They're super busy, which is why they hired a nanny or a babysitter in the first place. They really don't have time to talk to you, especially during normal working hours. And so, when you speak to the references, what they say is that it's not that they don't want to provide a reference, or they don't want to talk to you, or they have any problem with the nanny. They're just really busy. They have to go to work. They have to pick up their kids from school. And if you want to work normal hours, which, as business owners, I think we tend to push the hour pretty late, but if you want to talk to people during normal working hours, a lot of times they don't have time to talk to you. And so you end up trying to chase them. You're calling them, you're leaving voicemails, they're not getting back to you. It's incredibly frustrating. And so what you can do, what we've seen kind of works really well around this, as if you can put together the questions you'd like to ask a reference and send it to the reference in like a form where they can fill in kind of on their own time the kind of questions that you would typically like to ask them. This becomes really convenient for the people providing the references. And what's really been interesting looking at the data coming in from these is people are filling these in at like 10 p.m., 11 p.m., presumably after, they're done work, their kids have gone to sleep, and they finally have some time to themselves to breathe. And so, nobody really wants to get a call from you at 10 p.m., but they can sit down on their phone or on their computer and fill this in for 5-10 minutes. And this makes your life so much easier, not chasing them for the references. And it makes your references life easier, giving you that information. And so everyone really wins if you can think of a kind of a good way to do this. And we've seen a lot of kind of great ways. You can create kind of like a Google form with the questions that you like to ask and start sending those to the families. There's amazing software systems out there. If I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Scout. It's a really great reference checking tool. We follow this kind of form system as well. It's one of those things where, imagine if you're hiring somebody to do this, imagine what the time value of that is. Or, think about how much time it takes out of your day calling people. I've spoken to agency owners where they'll set aside an entire day just for checking references. That's a lot of time. So, I have heard some people tell me but how do we know the reference is legitimate and things like that? And those are really valid questions. There's a few great ways you can handle this. So what some of the agencies do is you can include questions in your reference check form related to the nanny's profile that only someone who has worked with them in that position should know. So what dates did they work with you, and see if it crosses back with what the nanny told you, or things like that. Ask them details about the kids or that kind of stuff. So really only stuff that the family should know. The other thing you can do, and what some agencies are also doing, is at the end of this reference check form, you can ask them if you can call, when is a good time to call them, even just for 2 minutes to verify the reference. So think about it, from your perspective and from the perspective of the references, and how can you save each other time, so yeah, those are kind of the five big time sucks that we've seen with nanny agencies. So the first one is creating those nanny profiles. Try to find a way to let the nannies help you put together those profiles as much as possible. Number two, if you're running a temp or sitter side, think about how much time you're spending on each client, and is it worth it? And what can you do to cut down on the time? And really the best way we've seen is collect as much information from the families as you can upfront. Number three, also related to temp and sitter side, is how are you communicating the information about the available jobs and the available bookings to your team or pool of sitters? If they don't have an easy way to know what jobs you have available, you're wasting too much time checking with people if they're available or whether they can do the job. Find a way to create transparency in that information. Number three, your data needs to be organized and searchable. If you can't look up your nannies based on the information they've already given you, you're spending too much time sorting through profiles, and you're probably losing people that you spent a lot of time vetting before, and now you forgot that they exist, they forgot you exist. Find a way to make sure your data is always available and searchable to you. And the last one, if reference checking is causing you nightmares, find a solution where you don't have to spend as much time getting those reference checks from people, and they don't have to spend as much time talking to you. So yeah, I mean, I think the overarching theme kind of that we've always seen emerge here is, as an agency owner, think about where in your process you're actually adding value. Chances are the things you do more amazing than anybody else is talking to the nannies, understanding their experience, understanding their background, understanding what they're looking for, and talking to the families, understanding exactly what their needs are, what their kids' needs are. And the more time you can spend talking to nannies and families, the more your business is going to grow, the happier both sides are going to be. And so if you're spending a lot of time like moving information from one place to another, looking stuff up, writing emails, those are things that are not kind of big value adds to yourself and to your company. And so find ways to cut back on that time, and yeah, it'll just be really amazing for your business. So
wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing those. We're going to go now to the questions. We'll start with the ones that we have on our actual chat. So Marilyn submitted a question that said, does Enginehire provide this type of service where nannies can match themselves to positions or to clients?
Yeah, so I mean, I hope this isn't too much of an advertisement or a shameless plug, but yes, it does. And so, we really kind of believe in that sort of model of, sharing that information with the nanny so they can see what jobs you have available, and then they can express to you whether they're interested or match it to themselves. And it's not just Enginehire that does that. There's a lot of other kind of tools and options for doing that, but yeah, we do that.
Another question that was submitted previously was, do I have to be a tech whiz to implement these types of tips?
I wouldn't say you have to be a tech whiz, but at the same time, and I don't mean this in any kind of bad way, but I think a lot of times people don't do these things because they're not that comfortable with tech. And so for some of these things, I think you don't have to be a tech whiz. It's really just about reframing how you think about it. For some of these things, if you do want to push it further, it does help to have that technical expertise. And so, it probably makes sense to hire somebody to help you with that, whether it's a developer or a company like ours, or it's kind of like, the way I think about it is like the same reason the families are hiring you to help them find a nanny, because you are the nanny whiz or the childcare whiz. It's the same thing. So I wouldn't say you need to be a tech whiz. Some of these things you can do yourself, and a lot of the tools I mentioned, Canva, WordPress, Wix, Airtable, they're designed in a way that they can be used by you, but I do think some of that technical expertise does help if you really want to get the most out of some of these tools.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Another question that someone submitted is, how much time does one actually save by using the right technology?
It really depends on how you're doing things right now. And you know, I would kind of flip that question back on you. Like, we have there's a really amazing person in the industry, Megan Metzger, who told me this thing about, like, look back on your day, look back on your week, and think about where did you spend your hours? Like, she asked me to keep a journal at the end of the day of, like, from this time to this time I did this, from this time to this time I did this, and then categorize your time in terms of, like, was this like do I feel like this was a good use of my time or a bad use of my time? Did I enjoy this task or did I not enjoy this task? And so if you can figure out what are the things that you don't enjoy and take a lot of time, those are the things you need to find some other way to do it. If you really enjoy it and it's taking a lot of time, that's not really the end of the world. Or if you don't enjoy something, but it doesn't take very long, that's fine too. You know, you can suffer through that. But if something takes a lot of time and you don't enjoy it, just try to track that for yourself and then see if there's ways you can do that. So, and then I also always kind of recommend, think about what are the things you're doing repetitively, you know, that you feel like you're doing again and again. And those things often get frustrating. I think I know I find them frustrating. And so, yeah, it's not a great answer. I know we kind of named the webinar 1.5 hours because that's kind of what the way we think about it if you put all of these kind of tips and tricks into place. But I don't know if there's a right answer for that. I think it changes for everybody.
I appreciate your honesty. Someone else submitted the following question. What would you say is the downside, if there are any, to using tech to save time?
It's a great question. And I think everything that we do, I think there's always a trade. You know, if you're getting something, you're trading something else. And so what tends to happen is, I think the mindset a lot of us have when we start our businesses is we want it to be so personal. We want to provide the best customer service to every single person. And it's really, to me, I think when we added automation to our own business, it's hard to imagine, like, you mean I'm not going to call that client or I'm not going to write them a personal email? It's a really hard thing to do. And so I think the downside often to using tech is you sometimes cannot be as personal for some of the things that you're doing. And so what you need to think about is, the way I think about that is, are there things that you're doing that were not really personal in the first place? Like, it can feel personal calling a client and asking for their credit card information, but maybe they hate that. You know, it's a waste of your time and a waste of their time. It's very high touch and it's personal, but it's not adding serious value. And so if you can collect that in a digital way, maybe that's a good way to save time. So I think one of the downsides to using tech is, when done incorrectly, you can lose some of the personality of your business. But I think when done correctly, it actually gives you more time to spend time actually talking to people and having conversations with people. So that's one thing. I think one of the other kind of potential downsides of tech is, it kind of ties back into that first question of being a tech whiz, is sometimes it can be scary and you don't fully understand, you know, you're giving up a little bit of kind of the 100% understanding of how everything in your business works, in order to achieve that efficiency. And so you need to think about if you're comfortable with that. And you know, because if you're using a tech system that you don't fully understand, there's now a portion of your business that you don't fully understand. And to me, that can be a downside. You know, it doesn't have to be. I think as a smart business owner, it's really important for us to understand what we're good at and what we're not good at, and getting other people to do and help us with the things that we're not good at. But you're giving, one of the downsides often if for using tech is, if you're not comfortable with tech or as kind of competent with tech, is there can be a sharp learning curve. It can be a little bit scary, but once you get comfortable and confident with it, usually it really is that unlock that lets your business grow to the next level. And so yeah, you know, you just have to balance that and know if that's the right trade for you to make.
That's some great insight. Another question that I received, it would be, what are the major players, or who are the major players with regards to our industry currently as it pertains to tech? So outside of Enginehire, which a lot of us use and support and champion, what would you say would be some other platforms? So I know you named Canva, Airtable, Excel, Google Docs. What would be some other tech players that maybe we should be aware of that could be beneficial to our industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some amazing ones. There's a Sitter Pro, I think I mentioned. They really kind of have an amazing system around the management of the sitter side of these businesses and the interaction between families and nannies. They have an awesome app for handling that. So that's definitely one to take a look at. I also mentioned Scout. They do reference checking, and they've built some really amazing technology around reference checking and screening people's social media and things like that, and run by really amazing people. So definitely recommend checking that one out. There's a great platform called Nanny Logic that is kind of like a database system for managing your nannies and your families. Again, really great people, really great system. And so I'm trying to think for kind of like this industry specifically. There's another great tool. It's a slightly step out, but it's called Raise Kids. And it's an app that helps the families and the nannies interact with each other and manage their experience once a family has hired a nanny. And I think what they've built is really amazing too, because I think for a lot of us in the agencies, once we match the nanny and the family together, as much as we want to stay on top of that and check in with them and make sure things are going well, it's hard to really stay connected to that. And a lot of times we lose touch. And so if we can provide them with the tools to be successful, kind of talking to each other and working with each other, I think that's a really amazing thing too. And then there are some tools out there that I know a lot of agencies are using that are not really built specifically for the industry, but are being used by a lot of people in a lot of effective ways. I mentioned like Airtable, and I don't know if I would put Excel in that same bucket, but and then there's database management systems like Dubsado, Honeybook. So there's a lot of great great tools out there. I think in terms of managing your website, the three best ones that we've seen are WordPress, Wix, and Squarespace. If you're doing your website on your own, I would probably stay away from WordPress. It can be a little bit more complicated. Wix and Squarespace are usually a little bit easier if you're kind of planning to manage your website on your own. But yeah, actually, to be honest, in from our point of view, I kind of felt like this industry was underserved by technology, which is kind of why we got into it in the first place. And so yeah, I'm happy and excited that there is a lot of great kind of technology options, and more people are building more technology for the industry. I think it'll be good for all of us kind of in the long run. So.
I agree. I think that you've provided so much insight on today. I was taking notes. And so running back what Akash said, just reminding us to help our nannies, help us to write their bio and get their information to us, to get all the information that we need from our clients up front, so that our temp services and backup care services can go seamlessly, to find ways to communicate with people what jobs are available and to use whatever tech you have available to do that. Helping your agency to run itself in the ways that it can, so that you can be more personable and more at high touch in the ways that really matter. Inputting information in a searchable format so that you're not doing double and triple work. And then using a platform that allows families to submit their reference information to you at a time that is most convenient for you, so that you're getting really authentic answers and transparent answers, and obviously just returns on those calls. You're getting the references to begin with. And so I think these are points that we can all take that would save us time, help our processes run smoothly. He's also giving us a lot of supplemental technology that if you don't know about, you can do a quick Google search and learn about. Our Facebook page is full of agency owners who probably have used one or more of those systems. And so I'm just really collaborating. And then for those who are looking for an all-in-one, really reaching out to Enginehire and Sitter Pro and Scout and Nanny Logic, all these places, and just finding what they offer to see if that's going to be something that's going to be good for you and your agency. I don't see, if there's any other questions, feel free to submit them into the chat box. I don't see any additional ones at this time. So we're going to make the best use of your time. I do have some housekeeping things I want to remind you guys about. So for those that are looking to go to the APNA conference, and if you're not, I hope you would consider the Judith Merlin Scholarship is still accepting applications. And today is that deadline. So even though the conference is sold out, this is a surefire and guaranteed way for you to be able to attend. And so it's really, really important if you're still looking to attend and you haven't been able to sign up, or that platform was close to you, that you consider this. You can go to the website, to the APNA website, and find that application and submit it today. I'll try to drop the link in the chat for you today before we all get off. Another thing is that we have a DEI scholarship that's available that Enginehire is also a part of. It's another guaranteed way to attend. Also, we will be dropping that into the chat box before we get off so that you have that link. It could also be found on our APNA Facebook page and also be found on the Professional Agency Owners Facebook page. The recording for this particular webinar will be available to everyone who registered by Tuesday, July 5th. So if you would like to roll this back, share it with others within your agency and your staff, that would be a great option for you. Please save the dates that we have additional webinars coming up. On July 21st, we'll be talking with a panel of agency owners about temp and backup care, strategies for long-term success. So we hope that you will meet us there. On August 25th, we'll be talking about storytelling and recruitment, expanding your user experience to meet your recruitment goals. And then on September 22nd, we'll be discussing culture transformation, how company culture affects your bottom line. So we do hope that you will join us for those webinars. Again, APNA is committed to helping you grow as an agency owner and how to grow your staff. We're all committed to the continuing education to grow yourself as a person and hopefully allow that to affect your community and ultimately your bottom line. We appreciate your attendance today. Thank you so much for your time, and everyone, we wish you the best of days. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.